Learning theories, classical conditioning. Ivan Pavlov. He studied the behavior of dogs and developed a theory of classical conditioning, which explains how people associate two stimuli in their minds and react to one of them as though it was the other. Classical conditioning is a behavior procedure in which a biologically patterned stimulus is paired with a previously neutral stimulus. Three stages of classical conditioning. Before conditioning. Before conditioning is when the unconditioned stimulus and conditioned response come into play. This is the natural response that was not taught. For instance, food produces salivating or a stomach virus produces nausea. During conditioning. During conditioning phase involves repeatedly pairing a neutral stimulus with an unconditioned stimulus. Eventually, the neutral stimulus becomes the conditioned stimulus. Before and during conditioning, both an unconditioned stimulus response will be observed. An unconditioned stimulus is one that provokes a natural response. After conditioning, the conditioned response is the learned response to the previous neutral stimulus. In our example, the conditioned response would be feeling hungry when you heard the sound of the whistle. In after conditioning phase, the conditioned stimulus alone triggers the conditioned response. 5 terms of classical conditioning. Neutral stimulus. Neutral stimulus is a stimulus that a first elicits no response. Pavlov introduced the ringing of the bell as a neutral stimulus. An unconditioned stimulus is a stimulus that leads to an automatic response. Unconditioned stimulus. Unconditioned stimulus, a stimulus that leads to an automatic response. An unconditioned response is an automatic response to a stimulus. Conditioned stimulus. Condition is a stimulus that can eventually trigger a conditioned response. In the described experiment, the conditioned stimulus was the ringing of the bell, and the conditioned response was a salivation. Note that neutral stimulus becomes the conditioned stimulus. Unconditioned response. Unconditioned response is an automatic response to a stimulus. The dog salivating for food is an unconditioned response in Pavlov's experiment. A conditioned stimulus, a stimulus that can eventually trigger a conditioned response. Conditioned response. Conditioned response is a learned response to a stimulus that was previously neutral. 4 basic law in classical conditioning. Acquisition. Acquisition refers to the period when the stimulus comes to evoke the conditioned response. Extinction. Extinction occurs when the conditioned stimulus is applied repeatedly without being paired with the unconditioned stimulus. Over time, the learned behavior occurs less often and eventually stop altogether, and conditioned stimulus returns to the neutral. Spontaneous recovery. It refers to the reemergence of a previously extinguished conditioned response after a delay. Stimulus generalization is the tendency of a new stimulus to evoke response or behavior similar to those elicited by another stimulus. 4 types of classical conditioning. Positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement aims to increase desired behavior by adding a favorable stimulus right after that behavior occurs. It is rewarding someone for what they do, and this reward encourages them to do it again. The reinforcing stimulus is a positive reinforcer. Negative reinforcement is a method that can be used to help teach specific behaviors. With negative reinforcement, Something uncomfortable or otherwise unpleasant is taken away in response to a stimulus. Over time, the target behavior should increase with the expectation that the unpleasant thing will be taken away. Positive punishment. The goal is to decrease the behavior by presenting an aversive or unpleasant stimulus following a behavior. Negative punishment. In negative punishment, you remove a pleasant stimulus to decrease a behavior.